Hey everyone, happy April. I hope everyone stayed safe the last few days with all the rain that we got. While we're all on pause and waiting for things to dry out, I thought I would just take a couple minutes and talk about a few factors to consider when we think about planting corn. The first factor to consider would be soil temperature and soil moisture. Soil moisture is definitely top of mind with all the rain we've been getting the past few days. This precipitation map that I have on the slide shows the accumulation we've had of moisture over the last 7 days. So everyone in the south, got hit a little bit harder, but as you move north, a little bit less, but still enough to keep us out of the field for a few days as we move north. When we talk about soil moisture and temperature fluctuations, corn is definitely more sensitive to these than soybeans. The ideal temperature that we like to see when going to plant corn is about 50 degrees, and not only have it being warm that day, but also looking at the extended forecast and seeing if we will maintain a consistent temperature over that time. Also, if we think about soil moisture, cold and wet is not ideal for corn. It can lead to early seedling diseases as well as compaction issues if we go in and plant too wet. The following graphs, I have about 3 slides from different areas in the state, but this data is from soiltemp.app, which is a great resource if you want to look at air temperature and want to compare your soil temperatures in your area. The green line on these graphs is 50 degrees. The light blue line is showing the air temperature, and the dark line is soil temperature at 2 inches. The graphs are going to start north, and then as we continue, go south, and I have everything labeled. The typical trend that we will see is the soil temperature will follow air temperature, but the fluctuation and the movement is much slower in soil temperatures. As we look at all these different locations, you will be able to see that we haven't had a consistent warm stretch in the last few days that has been consistently around 50 degrees or higher. Looking at the next slide, moving south a little bit into Louisville and Greenville, again, seeing similar trends. And also, these maps are looking out about 6 days. So we can see a few days back and then what we're looking at for almost the next week. As we move south, we can see that our temperatures are going to be closer to that 50-degree mark and above, probably looking at a couple days to have a decent stretch. But if we think about how much rain we had around the Mount Vernon and the Carbondale area, soil moisture is definitely going to be our limiting factor in this part of the world when we just think about being able to get in and plant. But makes sense as we trend farther south, our temperatures are going to pick up just a little faster too. The next factor to consider is our growing degree units, or GDUs. The equation for GDUs is your daily maximum temperature plus your daily minimum. You divide by 2 and then subtract by 50. And if we think about how GDUs relate to emergence, it does take about 90 to 120 GDUs for corn to emerge. So we have a emergence risk tool that has some great information. This graph is very busy, but what I really want to focus on right here is the bar graphs. So the bar graphs represent how many GDUs we are accumulating every day. And I ran a scenario for the month of April, and let's say that we decide to go plant on April 1st. We see that we're not accumulating just massive amounts of GDUs in a short amount of time. And if we think about 90 to 120 GDUs in April, we're really not going to hit that mark until anywhere from the 13th to the 16th, depending on where you are. It's really not ideal for corn to sit in the ground for 13 to 16 days. My rule of thumb is 5 to 7 days is great for corn emergence. So the graph here is for Carbondale, Louisville, and Mount Vernon. The next graph is for Decatur, Greenville, and O'Fallon, and really not seeing anything different even as we move farther north our emergence, let's say we decide to plant on the 1st, we really shouldn't expect anything up for 13 to 16 days. So again, not really hitting that ideal time frame that we'd like to see when going to plant corn. And to kind of bring it together, why is emergence important? And the way I like to think about yield is broken down to a few different components when we think about this season. And so early season, our stand and emergence is extremely key. And then as we continue into the season, we have factors like kernel counts and kernel weight that also come into play later on. So right now, since we are in springtime, we want to focus on emergence. And if we think about what we have control over as we go through the growing season, really we have the most control over our stand establishment when we compare it to other factors that contribute to yield. So we know that we can go in and we can plant at a nice temperature, and we can choose those time frames that we go and plant. And what we're really targeting is to have even emergence so that we know we will have similar ear size. If you have a plant that emerges later, we know that that will contribute to yield loss later on in the season. So when plants do not emerge at the same time, we see differences in ear size, which leads to differences in kernel counts and then in turn yield. So if we have a plant that emerges later, like the one in the picture, that larger plant will consider that plant, the small one, like a weed or competition for nutrients and water. So it will always be at a disadvantage as we continue throughout the season. So trying to keep our emergence as even as possible is extremely important when we think about going to plant corn. So as we're drying out here in Illinois, we have a little bit of time before the planters start to roll again. We can do a few things to make sure that we are prepared whenever it does shape up and we're ready to go plant. The first thing, gotta keep checking the forecast. When we get dried out, start thinking about when are we gonna hit those ideal temperatures for corn, thinking about that 50-degree mark and seeing are we gonna stay consistent through the extended forecast. Second is hybrid placement. Hybrid placement and variety placement is key. Not all hybrids like this same type of acre placement, so we want to be able to set those hybrids and varieties up for success before we go into the planting season. If you have any questions about placement, please be sure to reach out to your local seed pro or your agronomist. The third is equipment prep. I've seen a lot of sprayers and planters drug out of the sheds the last few weeks, and so it is already on everyone's mind to start getting ready, but we want to make sure that we have all the bugs worked out before we head to the field. We also want to make sure all of our monitors, our iPads, climate app, or whatever system you use has been updated and is ready to go. Thank you so much for listening today, and always feel free to reach out to your local seed pro or channel technical agronomist.